The following contains sexual humor, a male feminist, and poorly executed physical comedy. Viewer discretion is advised. So a foreskin, a clitoris, and a rabbi walk into a bar. Hey everybody. Hey everybody, welcome. We're coming at you live, well, somewhat less than live from the Equality State. And today we're going to be taking a look at a PragerU video entitled Make Men Masculine Again. It's hosted by a young lady named Allie. Take it away, Allie.
Rape, murder, war. They all have one thing in common.
Capitalism, patriarchy, unjust hierarchies in general. Property ownership constructs writ large across the whole of society. Yeah, nailed it! Oh! I'm the king of trivia! I'm the king of trivia!
Men.
Oh, damn, that's kind of harsh.
Aggression, violence, ambition unchecked by conscience, all the stuff of toxic masculinity, right?
Yes.
And the solution is obvious. Make men less toxic. Make men less masculine.
Or make masculinity less toxic. Less about power and control and violence, and more about equity and justice and peace. It's an idea.
Make men more like women.
No, not unless he's into that sort of thing.
But I'm here to tell you that that way of thinking is not only wrong, it's dangerous.
Dangerous to what? Our strong, tough, heroic, manly feelings? Come on.
When you try to make men more like women, you don't get less toxic masculinity. You get more.
Somebody's playing fast and loose with the meaning of words. Let's hear more.
Why? Because bad men don't become good when they stop being men.
Who the fuck said that? Nobody said that, ever.
Aggression, violence, and unbridled ambition can't be eliminated from the male psyche.
That's right, little boy. Getting beat on by a grown-ass man for crying is perfectly natural. The beating, not the crying. The crying was an aberration that required correction. Aren't you grateful, you little bitch? Back to you, Allie.
The same masculine traits that bring destruction also defeat tyranny.
Tyrannies which grew up on the backs of so-called masculine traits. I mean, every Nero and Mussolini throughout history had himself a smash-happy gaggle of walking dick pics with no capacity for independent thought.
The traits that drive men to take foolish risks also drive men to take heroic risks.
Maybe, but remember, and I quote, "What a man gives in heroic courage on the battlefield, a woman gives in eternally patient devotion, in eternally patient suffering and endurance." Adolf Hitler. Yeah, Hitler said that, not me. May I remind you, Godwin's Law was called on account of Trump. Seriously though, encouraging all young men to heroic feats on the battlefield is a fairly characteristic feature of fascist cultures. Just saying.
The answer to toxic masculinity isn't less masculinity. It's better masculinity.
Yes.
And we know what that looks like.
You clearly do not.
It's a young man opening the door for a girl on their first date.
Polite, but patronizing. You're walking a fairly thin line if you try it, my dudes.
It's a father working long hours to provide for his family.
Or taking care of the kids while mom works. Or cooperating with other working men all around the world so that they won't have to work long hours to provide for their families. That's right, PragerU fans. I'm one of them socialismists. Go nuts, motherfuckers.
It's a soldier risking his life to defend his country.
Alright, screw you, lady. Soldiering fucks men up. It kills them, maims them, drives them crazy, and, since the advent of nuclear bombs and ICBMs, does nothing to defend this country. The only individuals that benefit from a war in this day and age are the major shareholders of Boeing and Raytheon, yet here you are, shaming young men into that fucking meat grinder. You should be ashamed of yourself.
When men embrace their masculinity in a way that is healthy and productive, they are leaders, warriors, and heroes. When they deny their masculinity, they run away from responsibilities.
Aggression, violence, and greed don't make for responsible people.
The consequences can be seen everywhere. 1 in 4 fathers now lives apart from his children.
Many of whom were abusers. Remember, guys, it's the Arapaho tribe that gets the casinos, not the Slapaho tribe, so don't go joining the latter.
And children who grow up without a dad are generally more depressed than their peers who have a mother and a father.
Aggression, violence, and greed does not make for good parenting.
They are at far greater risk for incarceration, teen pregnancy, and poverty. 71% of high school dropouts are fatherless.
You're putting the cart before the horse. All those things are a symptom of poverty, especially when the poor young men in question are aggressive, violent, and greedy. See, for a poor man, those things are a sure roadmap to prison.
Of all the rocks upon which we build our lives, family is the most important. And we are called to recognize and honor how critical every father is to that foundation. That was said by then Senator Barack Obama in 2008. If we are honest with ourselves, he went on, we'll admit that too many fathers are missing from too many lives and too many homes.
Oh, well, checkmate, you got me. Barack Hussein Obama is, after all, my God. As an atheist, Marxist, honorary Kenyan Muslim, I believe everything he says, all the time. Well played, Malige. Well played.
As much as we try to deny the need for real masculine strength in society, there's no denying its necessity.
I'm denying it right now. Pound! I'm back, y'all.
The current trend is to feminize young men in the hopes of achieving some utopian notion of equality and peace.
Jesus Christ. Equality and peace are bad for the teeth. Indoctrinate your kids with autocracy and state-sponsored murder orgies. New from Colgate.
And the school classroom, boys are invariably the problem. On the playground, aggressive games like dodgeball have long been banished.
Where the fuck do you live that dodgeball is verboten, but you've never met a stay-at-home dad?
We tell young men that their intrinsic desire to compete is wrong. Everybody gets a trophy. Don't run up the score.
That has nothing to do with gender roles. That has to do with consumerism. The customer is always right. Have it your way. Blame Burger King, not Simone de Beauvoir.
This anti-male tilt continues on through higher education and into the workplace.
Corporate HR departments are not against men. They're against rape and stupidity because those things lead to lawsuits. And I'm sorry, but if you really believe that sexual harassment is a natural result of people having cocks and balls, all I can say is, fuck you very much.
It has created millions of tentative men, unhappy women, and confused boys and girls.
Thoughtful, self-critical men don't rape. Unhappiness has far more to do with consumer capitalist society, more on that in later videos, and I'm sorry, but kids are confused by their shoelaces. But they do eventually learn to tie their shoes.
I don't know any woman at any age who is attracted to a passive man who looks to her to be his provider, protector, and leader.
And if you haven't met any, they don't exist. Conservatism 101. Here's an actual fact. BDSM does exist. Here's another. 1 in 5 housewives are actually men.
Every woman I know wants a strong, responsible man. That's not a consequence of a social construct or cultural pressure. It's innate.
Okay, if that's true, what about the hippies? But seriously though, if women always want the macho types, how do you account for the counterculture movement in the 60s? I mean, here you have all these skinny, long-haired, definitionally passive young men, and they're scavenging for garbage on the one hand, and getting loads of trim on the other. How do you explain that, if it's innate? If it's not a cultural pressure, then how come the countercultural pressure overcame it back in the 60s?
Passive men don't defend, protect, or provide. Passive men don't lead. Passive men don't do the things we have always needed men to do for society to thrive.
Great! Women can run shit for a while. See how it goes. Couple hundred years, who knows? They might even try cooperating with the rest of their own fucking species for a change. Could be a hoot.
In his book, The Abolition of Man, English social philosopher C.S. Lewis writes about this problem.
The kitty diddler from Narnia? Skip it.
Rape, murder, war. They all have two things in common. Bad men who do the raping, murdering, and warring, and weak men who won't stop them. We need good men who will.
Oh man, I like the turn that took just there. Although, women have trigger fingers too. Also, agency and will. Does she remind anybody else of that gal from Chuck, but in that other show with the capes and the hats and the badass chick from Mad Men? You guys know what I'm talking about?
It's not masculinity that's toxic. It's the lack of it.
Roll back the clock, in other words, the conservative answer to all and sundry and about as useful as a touch on a punch. Because the truth is, there was no golden age of benevolent knuckleheads, where women were never raped, the vulnerable were never exploited, and where greedy, violent, and aggressive men stood up to tyrants rather than serve them. The age of chivalry, the southern gentleman, all those things are verifiable crocks of shit. But facts don't really matter when you're making propaganda. I mean, they help, but just saying it a lot helps more. Alright guys, thanks for sticking with me to the end. If you're not subbed, do it now! Do it right now! It costs you nothing! Oh, I'm sorry guys, but seriously, do sub, because it helps me out a lot. And if you ever want to see my face again, go ahead and hit that fucking bell too. Do this, or that, whatever's in your heart. Comment if you want. Also, share it around if you could, if you can do that in your area and it's safe. And remember, guys, good faith and kindness are not a finite resource, so please treat each other accordingly in the comments. You guys give me hope. See you later.